All right, let's keep going. Since we looked at India, let's talk about other places in Asia that were also colonized during the second wave of imperialism throughout the 19th century. And again, remember the main countries that are going to be leading the imperialist movement are going to be the industrialized countries. So what do we see? We see Japan. They're going to conquer Korea. They're going to conquer the little island of Taiwan. Both of these used to be under China's control. The Japanese are going to take them away. We can see Russia expand its territory all over Central Asia, into parts of Mongolia, into parts of Manchuria, which is, modern day northern China. We're going to see the United States step up its imperial gain by taking control of the Philippines. The Philippines used to be a Spanish colony for hundreds of years. And in 1898, the Americans are going to win the Spanish-American War and take the colony for themselves, and they're going to keep that colony all the way into World War II. The French are going to have their territory in Indochina, that is Southeast Asia, modern day countries of Cambodia and Vietnam. And of course, the Dutch are going to be controlling those Spice Islands, right, where they have a monopoly, and those will be called the East Indies, or the Dutch East Indies, and those include modern day countries of Malaysia and Indonesia. Now, China, of course, was the big prize, and even though China was not colonized to the same extent that other places in Asia were, China was definitely weakened and chopped up and divided and under a lot of foreign influence. Remember, the Chinese dynasty was unable to resist Western intervention, Western intrusion, Western invasion, and all these Chinese territories on their coast were cut up and chopped up into different spheres of influence that the Western and other industrial powers controlled. And eventually we're going to see that the Qing dynasty will collapse at the beginning of the contemporary era, at the beginning of the 20th century. How were the Europeans always able to do this? Well, of course, they had that, military superiority, that technological superiority that gave them that advantage to be able to defeat the people and then conquer their lands. Now, throughout the Pacific, we're also going to see imperialism take place. The main case would be in Australia and New Zealand. These would become settler colonies. And settler colonies are kind of different than other colonies because there was a place where many British people are going to move to settle down in. So it's very different than, say, like India, where not that many British people moved there. But on Australia and New Zealand, we're going to see a lot of British population move there, which explains why in Australia and New Zealand people speak English. Now, of course, these islands or these territories of Australia and New Zealand, they were not unpopulated. There were people there. There were the indigenous people living there. In Australia, they were called the Aboriginals. In New Zealand, they're called the Maori. And they're going to fight against the Europeans, fight against the British. But they're going to suffer. Right? And we kind of see the whole Columbian exchange kind of come back in the modern era, right? Which is a great synthesis, because the people of Australia and New Zealand are going to die from diseases that they've been haven't been exposed to, and therefore have no immunities towards, but they're also going to die from war. And again, why are they unable to overthrow and kick out these Europeans? Because the Europeans come in with steam ships and machine guns, and simply, are able to have that technological superiority. We also see, again, mass migration. A lot of Europeans, a lot of British people are going to leave the homeland, come to live in Australia and New Zealand, because, there's a lot of this open land, a lot of opportunities that might not have been available to them back home in Great Britain. Now, we also see that once the Europeans are in Australia, once the British are in there, they're going to actually put a lot of restrictions on migrations to Australia. They don't want Chinese or Filipinos or Indonesians migrating to Australia either. So they're going to pass this law called the White Australia Policy. And basically, they're going to claim that Australia should be a land for white people, for Europeans, and therefore any non-European wouldn't be allowed to come in. So this is kind of like a rejection of, non-white migrations. So a lot of people are going to want to move to Australia, but these type of laws are going to restrict it. Throughout the Pacific, we're going to see a lot of little islands in the Pacific also become colonies of Europe. For example, the Hawaiian Islands are going to become a U.S. territory and eventually a U.S. state. And a whole bunch of little islands all over the Pacific are going to be either ruled by, the Japanese or the British or the French or even the Germans. Now, why do these, why would the Europeans want all these little islands in the middle of nowhere? Well, for one thing, you need refueling stations so that your oceanic ships that are traveling across the ocean have a place to dock and refuel. The other thing is that you can use the local populations to grow cash crops or gather natural resources. So stuff like pineapples. Pineapples become this very big, popular cash crop as well as sugar. Another natural resource that we see throughout the islands is guano. Guano is basically bird poop, but it is a very good fertilizer, and of course it'll increase food production if you apply it to your crops. So any minerals or resources or anything you can gather from these islands will be reason enough for the Europeans to get their hands on these islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. All right, so that is it for part number 3. I'll see you next time.